You don't raise your voice. You don't ask for much. You notice moods before words. You feel tension in rooms before anyone else admits it exists. You are the one people lean on, the one who listens, the one who understands, the one who forgives quickly and waits patiently. And yet, you are often the one left exhausted, overextended, quietly resentful, wondering why your kindness seems to attract people who take, and take, and take. Here is the paradox no one warned you about. The very trait that once kept you emotionally safe is now the trait that puts you at risk. Your kindness didn't come from abundance, came from adaptation. At some point you learned, consciously or not, that being easy was safer than being honest, that being helpful was safer than being needy, that being kind was safer than being real. So you became good, very good. You became emotionally fluent. You became accommodating. You became reliable. And the world rewarded you not with care, but with access. Because kindness without boundaries doesn't read as love to the unconscious mind of others. It reads as permission. This is not because you are weak. It's because you are deeply conditioned. And tonight, we're going to tell the truth about that conditioning, without romanticizing it, without shaming it, and without pretending it's noble suffering. Because kindness that costs you your selfhood is not virtue. It is a wound that learned how to smile. To understand why kind people get used, we need to dismantle a myth. This is not about morality. It is about nervous system survival strategies. Many chronically kind people are operating from a trauma-adapted archetype known as fawn response, a term introduced in trauma psychology alongside fight, flight, and freeze. The fawn response is the art of appeasement. It is the body learning, if I make myself pleasant, I reduce threat. This response often develops in childhood environments where love was inconsistent, conditional, or emotionally unavailable. Add to this parentification, where a child learns to manage the emotions of adults, and kindness becomes fused with identity. You don't just do kindness, you are kindness. Neurologically, this wires the brain toward hypervigilance. Your nervous system is always scanning. Is someone upset? Did I say the wrong thing? Do they still like me? Your default mode network, the brain's self-referential system, becomes oriented around others rather than the self. Your internal monologue is less, what do I need? And more, how am I being perceived? Philosophically, Carl Jung would call this a persona over-identification, where the mask becomes mistaken for the self. Kindness becomes armor, but armor worn too long fuses to the skin. And here is the brutal truth. Most people are not trained to recognize trauma-based kindness. They experience it as convenience, not because they are evil, but because unconscious systems exploit open loops. Kindness without limits signals infinite availability, and availability invites extraction. The deepest cost of this pattern is not being taken advantage of. It is self-abandonment disguised as goodness. You learn to swallow preferences. You learn to soften no into maybe. You learn to endure discomfort silently. And slowly, invisibly, you trade authenticity for belonging. You feel it when saying yes leaves a hollow ache. Helping doesn't feel fulfilling anymore. Resentment creeps in after kindness. You feel guilty for wanting rest. This is invisible grief, the grief of the unlived self. Jung once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. But there is another burden rarely named, the unlived life of the self sacrificed for acceptance." The core fear driving this pattern is not rejection. It is disconnection, not being unloved, but being unnecessary. So you remain useful. You remain kind. You remain available. But usefulness is not intimacy. And kindness without mutuality becomes a transaction where you are always paying. Simple moments become complex. You overthink boundaries. You feel selfish for resting. You explain yourself too much. You feel anxious after expressing needs. This is the quiet suffering of people who learned that love must be earned. This pattern doesn't stay in childhood. It matures with you. You might recognize yourself in these adult manifestations. In relationships, you attract partners who are emotionally unavailable or self-focused. You give empathy. They give ambiguity. At work, you overperform, undercharge, and hesitate to ask for recognition, then wonder why others advance faster. With boundaries, you feel anxious enforcing limits. You explain your no as if it's a crime scene defense. Internally, you experience chronic guilt even when you've done nothing wrong. Emotionally, you confuse exhaustion with compassion and burnout with loyalty. Socially, you become the strong one until you collapse privately. These are not personality traits. They are coping strategies. And healing does not begin with changing behavior. It begins with witnessing. Witnessing means not gaslighting your resentment, not minimizing your exhaustion, not shaming your need for reciprocity. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What did this once protect me from?" Healing this archetype does not mean becoming hard, cold, or cruel. It means choosing softness with structure. Practically, this involves inner child reparenting, offering yourself the safety you once sought externally. Boundary practice, saying no without justification. Shadow work, reclaiming anger as a protective signal, not a moral failure. Nervous system regulation, teaching the body that connection does not require self-erasure. Kindness that comes from fullness feels different. It is calm. It is selective. It is reciprocal. As philosopher Eric Fromm wrote, love is not an act of giving that impoverishes oneself. The goal is not to be fixed. You were never broken. The goal is to become whole, where kindness is a choice, not a compulsion. You are allowed to be kind and protected, soft and bounded, loving and sovereign. And when you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable, something profound happens. You don't lose love. You lose parasites. If this message resonated, share it with someone who gives too much and asks too little. Subscribe not to become someone else, but to remember who you were before survival taught you to disappear. Because true kindness begins with you,